My Caribbean Marina is probably the biggest in the entire island chain. Here, the Marin, Martinique, is bigger than anything in the UK and indeed most of the Mediterranean. It's certainly smaller than, say, Les Minimes in La Rochelle on the Atlantic coast, but here the sun shines all year round, every day, except when it rains, which it does briefly every day so far, and this is the dry season. In fact, when I was trying to park the boat for the first time, when I arrived here from Southampton via Antigua, it rained on me. Mind you, it's warm and it's wet and the sun comes out and you're dry in 5 minutes. Actually, it's very pleasant as long as you've remembered to close the hatch. And if you haven't, well, the stuff dries off pretty quickly in the sun when you put it out in the cockpit once the rain stops. And it dries in 20 minutes or so. I'm really lucky to have a berth facing into the trade winds, so I can have the forward hatches open. I can sit really comfortably in the saloon writing or editing or doing stuff like this or contemplating the meaning of life with a gentle breeze that sort of wafts through the cabin. It's great. I did purchase a set of 12-volt auto pans in the UK to install once I got here, and they're still in the box, and I think I may well not bother. Okay, it's 28 degrees most of the day, except around noon when it's a bit more. And most people retire into the shade at noon and sit down or lay down or have a relax. At night I'm sleeping in my cabin in boxer shorts, but around 2 AM I pull the sheet over me just to keep out the cold. I'm really lucky to be here. So what is it actually like having my boat here? Well, this marina, like most of the Caribbean, majors on the charter trade, mainly on huge 50 to 70 foot catamarans with a skipper and a hostess, in which the charterers enjoy sailing, anchoring, sailboards, I don't know, scuba diving, whatever, and they're fed and relaxed in relative luxury. There are a few bareboat charters here from Sunsail and Moorings, mainly in catamarans and a few 45-foot monohulls, but those are for experienced sailors who bring a party of family or friends with them. And I suspect most of these charter boats take the option of having the professional skipper on board. All the monohull boats out here are big. In fact, most of the privately owned boats in the marina are 43 foot upwards, so my little Beneteau 323 is a minnow. Small, but beautifully formed, as Dudley put it. So much of life happens from the cockpit. Bigger boats do it better. It is all a bit cheek by jowl compared to the UK, where we normally have fingers off the pontoon for your boat to moor alongside, and that sort of separates the boats out a bit. The berths here are designed for stern-to mooring with 2 lines on the back round pontoon cleats, which you back up to and adjust for how far you want your stern and stern fenders to be from the pontoon, and 1 or 2 fixed lines going either to a buoy with a ring on the top of it or down to presumably a very heavy chain or concrete blocks under the water. They have a very light line tied to the pontoon, which you pull up from beside the pontoon, or it's handed to you by the marinero. And if you're sensible, you run it along the end of your boat hook rather than with your hands, as the ropes are filthy and barnacle encrusted. There are some 100-odd mooring buoys belonging to the marina out in the bay, and then beyond that there are folks anchoring just as far as you can see. At the moment there are at least 4 other English boats here. 2 came here directly from their first landfall after Atlantic crossings, and others came from St. Lucia, where they arrived with the Ark. There are a large group of retired, mainly French people who just live out here in their boats and I suspect never go sailing. And there's a lot of Americans and Canadians who keep their boats here permanently, as I intend to do, visiting from time to time. And of course, the visitors' pontoon, which is always crowded and constantly changing. Although many boats come here just to get work done or to buy items that are simply not available in the other islands. Coming off the pontoon, there are convenience stores, pizzerias, a dozen or so cafes and restaurants. There's a baker for fresh morning croissant or baguette, as well as a shop selling pre-roasted chicken and I think hamburgers and chops. There's a medical centre with a GP, paramedics and a nurse with a physio next door. There's a big chandler's and there's various yacht maintenance places. Literally just across the road is an Auchan supermarket. Not the biggest, but it has got fruit and veg, as well as a pretty wide range of goods, including wine and rum. The entire marina is expanding and is pretty successful. I counted 5 new buildings going up in the immediate vicinity, destined to either be cafes or boat-related businesses, I guess. Just along the path towards the old marina, which is also a major yacht charter base as well, are stainless steel suppliers, welders making everything from stern frames for solar panels and dinghy davits to pulpits and push pits, everything you need for the boat. Next door are riggers installing roller reefing furling. They're re-rigging a 70-foot catamaran as I speak. This company also has departments for aircon, fridges and boat electronics, from solar panels to radar to chart plotters. In the area of the old marina, which actually I rather prefer to here, there are 7 chandlers, 2 marine engineers selling both outboards and inboards from stock, as well as 3 yacht brokers and a boat insurance agency. It's all a bit like a permanent London boat show back in the day. And there's a really nice restaurant selling local type meals run by 2 sisters. The eldest is a very talented chef who cooks brilliantly, and the younger is the maitre d' waitress who makes eating there an absolute pleasure after the rather bland food and commercial atmosphere of the restaurants around the main port area. If you walk on past the old marina, you get to the covered market, which sells fruit and veg and trinkets. And a little further on, towards the fish market, there are several really nice local restaurants with great atmosphere. Another half-hour's walk gets you to the Marina Bay area, which houses the huge boatyard with its 500-ton travel lift and a small 150-ton lift for boats like mine, as well as storage and special systems to tie the boats down during the hurricane season. The cost of hauling my 10-metre boat in and out, including 3 days on the hard, all inclusive, hauling in, out, 3 days on the hard, is going to be €600, say £550. The only extra is going to be the pressure hose off, which comes from the company based in the yard. And there's a chandler's in the yard that will give you a choice of international anti-fouling or international anti-fouling. And they don't stock the cheapest end of the range either. Well, there you go. This is the part of the bay where you can also buy SIM cards for your router or your phone from Digicel, who are the company which operate most throughout the Caribbean islands, or Orange FR, Orange France, as well, who also sell SIM cards. And there are dentists, opticians, banks, sailmakers, engineers, and a huge supermarket with a dinghy dock at the rear, so you can easily park your boat and your annex and go shopping. There's also a wood yard with a DIY department. The downside is that all the prices are high. French chandlers tend to be more expensive than UK and German online shops. then that is particularly true here. And it's partly because the goods have to be shipped in across the Atlantic, so that cost is immediately added to the price. And partly because the island imposes an import duty on all goods brought in from mainland France, or indeed the rest of the world. And there's VAT, the local island VAT of 17.5% on top of all that. So prices are roughly, I don't know, maybe 30% higher than the cheapest in the UK. If it's in stock, then that's fine. But if it isn't, you can expect several weeks to await delivery from a local chandler's. In terms of basing your boat here, it's probably going to be as good as you get in the Caribbean. English is spoken by all the commerçants, all the business owners, and the euro is really the only currency in circulation, so currency exchange is easy at an ATM machine, which are simply everywhere. And the cost of keeping Golden Haze in her marina berth here? Well, the contracts are 6 monthly, and for my 10-metre boat, it's 1,800 euros half a year, or 3,600 a year, which equates to somewhere around £3,000 a year. You can buy quite a lot of airfares with the savings on these marina prices. The cheapest airfare is from Paris, and it's around 500 euros, say £450. And from there to the UK, there's a choice of EasyJet for around 30 or 40 pounds, or the train, the under-tunnel train, which runs into St Pancras. It's early days, and I had a fairly lumpy, windy 150-mile sail down from Antigua to Guadeloupe to Dominica to Martinique, and it was fun. The trade winds never stop blowing, so unlike the Mediterranean, you can reasonably expect to have a fair wind on the beam wherever you go in the island chain. Weather forecasting is easy on phone apps, and basically, the living is good. See ya. At my website, gentlesailing.com, you can find my books about sailing and boats. French Canal Routes to the Mediterranean has sold over 3,000 copies, and the Gentle Sailing Route to the Med, down the Atlantic coast without having to spend a night at sea, has sold over 2,700 copies. The Atlantic Crossing Guide, which I published last year, is being downloaded in amazing numbers, I'm really pleased to say. They're all instant PDF downloads, and there's a link to a UK website that can turn them into printed books for around £5 if that's what you prefer. Gentlesailing.com. About a dozen books there, including guides to the Caribbean and crossing the Pacific. Fair winds.